Okay, good morning, and thank you for joining us today for the Emyria Limited Investor Webinar. My name is Jane Morgan, and today we'll be discussing Emyria's novel, cannabinoid and MDMA drug development programs, following the recently announced pure CBD agreement with Alta Sciences to accelerate FDA and TGA cannabinoid registration programs, as well as their novel MDMA analog drug discovery pipeline. Emyria's Managing Director and CEO, Dr. Michael Winlow, will present the recently lodged presentation and provide an overview of the imminent independent report to inform the possible rescheduling of MDMA psilocybin with the TGA. Today, I am joined by Emyria's Managing Director, Dr. Michael Winlow, who will present the updated company presentation with a Q&A session to follow. We encourage all attendees to send through any questions to lexi@janemorganmanagement.com.au or through the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Michael, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Jane. Really appreciate that. Let me just share my screen so we can get started. And that word that Jane was getting out there was psilocybin, which I can assure you is a lot harder to say if you've actually taken the drug. But we'll cover what the TGA is considering for that program in a moment. The deck I'm going to take you through this morning or this afternoon is now released on the ASX platform. It's available at our website, and I encourage you to download it and take your time with it as well, because I will move through it reasonably quickly this morning, touching on some of the highlights of our program. Great. So let's get started. So quick corporate snapshot. Emyria is a listed company. We've been trading since February 2020. We are now sitting share price around 18 or so cents. It's firmed up quite nicely around there. We do have 250 million shares on offer, of which 100 million are currently escrowed. And I do want to point out that the top 20 holdings is quite substantive, around 60%, with directors owning close to 30% of the company. Current cash, 6.5 million. That's our last reported position at the 30th of June. So we have a really good runway to get through some of these development programs, which I'll take you through this morning. I won't go through all the highlights here, but our team has deep clinical and drug development expertise, as you can see through the backgrounds of these individuals. But importantly, wanted to show some of the really world-class advisors we've been able to bring into our team as well. Of note here, Dr. Karen Smith, ex-Global Head of Research and Development and Chief Medical Officer of Jazz Pharmaceuticals, notable for acquiring GW Pharma for $7.2 billion in February this year. GW Pharma being the only registered cannabinoid medicine product available worldwide. We have a number of really excellent consultant psychiatrists on our advisory as well, Dr. Richard Mattengard and Ellie Kotler, helping us think through our mental health programs, and in particular, our psychedelic-assisted treatment programs. And recently teamed up with some excellent individuals and experts from the University of Western Australia, Dr. Matt Pickett and Dr. Martin Iverson, renowned medicinal chemists and neuropharmacologists, respectively, who are helping us develop and expand on the MDMA analog library that we've recently acquired, which I'll explain a little bit about as well. So really notable team, people excited about our mission, and particularly our approach to drug development. So what's unique about what we've done? Emyria has some really unique assets that we've curated and invested heavily in building. We now have one of the world's largest real-world evidence data sets on cannabinoid treatments for patients across a range of different indications. And that has been built up across our national network of medical practices. From that data, we're able to find where these treatments are working best and protect patent positions on methods of use. We've also expanded our patent portfolio to start including new dose formulations and delivery methodologies as well. We recently picked up a proprietary MDMA analog library, over 100 different compounds, slight structural changes to MDMA or ecstasy, which have been shown, or which we believe will have benefit as psychiatric treatments or treatments for other neurological disorders as well. We have our national footprint of 7 clinical sites where we are able to see patients, provide them access to new treatments, study how those treatments are working or not in that patient population. And that really forms our key data asset. And we've also developed a TGA-approved Class 2 medical device grade patient remote monitoring system, which further supports our data collection. And what these assets have allowed us to do is launch a number of drug development programs which are in advanced stages, pursuing registration with major regulators. We've been able to develop a partnership and redeploy our clinical services, take our same approach of evidence-generating care and apply it to a new frontier, psychedelic-assisted therapy for PTSD, looking at MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for those patients with a phase 2 clinical study. And recently, as I mentioned, a really terrific agreement with UWA to screen and expand a library of MDMA-like compounds to develop new promising treatments. So our focus are these molecules on the right here: MDMA, cannabidiol, and THC. So today I'll take you through why I think these assets greatly accelerate our registration plans, why a little bit about our treatment development program, drug development programs, and then what to expect in the coming few months. Okay, I'll skip through some of the wordier slides here and focus on some of these graphical ones. But we've pulled together patients with unmet needs. We now have, we just crossed 5,000 patients actually earlier this week. 5,000 patients have been referred to us for care. They get treated and get very attentive, personalized care from our clinicians. We provide each of those patients access to a brand new unregistered treatment because other things have not worked for those patients. They haven't hit their health goals and they're willing to try something new. And we provide a safe environment for those patients to try new and promising treatments. But we invest heavily in the experience of every patient. We don't want to fumble the opportunity to learn from our patients. And so we also have infrastructure to collect data, to understand what's working, in whom, and we can use those insights to find specific treatments that are potential to be registered mainstream medicines for particular patient populations. And that's what we call a dose response insight. It's the really hard thing to obtain. It's what clinical trials are designed to deliver at great cost and in time and money. But by learning from real patients in the real world and providing access to these new treatments and learning what's happening, we can get these dose response insights much more effectively, much more efficiently, while at the same time providing care, but importantly, developing a perspective on which treatments are going to become or have the greatest potential to become new registered medicines. And those insights inform our drug development programs, which comprise now of novel drug delivery technologies, which I'll explain is behind our synthetic cannabinoid program, and also designed the clinical studies and the program required to obtain registration with groups like the TGA in Australia or the FDA in the US. But you can't get those drug development programs unless you've already invested heavily in these insights, and very difficult to catch up to where we are because one would need to replicate the clinical network we have, the data platforms we've invested in, and obviously the team we have behind us to take these drugs forward. And so what have we done today? We've got these terrific sites around Australia actively treating patients, a very, very diverse set of patients, children as young as 2, patients as old as 98, representing more than 40 different clinical indications. So this gives us a really deep and very broad perspective on where cannabinoids are most effectively treated. And of course, as we start to expand into psychedelic-assisted treatments, we also get access to those patients for those treatment development programs as well. We've been able to compile millions of data points with our data collection systems. We're tracking how these treatments are working using clinical trial methodologies so we can trust the robustness and the quality of the data that we have, and ultimately the utility of that data to inform our drug development programs, of which I'll highlight some of these a little later this morning. Here's where we're at today. Snapshot of our actively publicly announced programs: EMD3 targeting psychological distress for an over-the-counter scheduling in Australia. EMD004 targeting the symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome. We have a number of different formulation possibilities for that. We also have our MDMA inspired programs as well, including MDMA-assisted psychotherapy as a clinical trial for post-traumatic stress disorder, and then the analog program, where we're taking MDMA-like compounds, making adjustments to them to see what new indications and treatments we can develop from that work. And that screening and expansion program is what's planned for us in the next 12 months. Now, we focus on major unmet needs. Our clinics exist because standard of treatment is not helping our patients hit their care goals. And so those patients are referred to us by their specialist, by their GP, to our centers to try something new, to try and get a breakthrough, to hit their health goals where standard treatment has not been effective. That in and of itself is a really worthwhile and compelling mission, but we also have a chance to learn how those new treatments are working on those patients. What we have seen across our patient population, though, regardless of their indication or reason for coming to us, is that mental health has been a really major hot point for all of our patients. Many of our patients have symptoms of anxiety, depression, or stress, often associated with their complex chronic health condition. And for about 15% of our patients, mental health is the primary reason that they're coming to see us. And so we've treated through that through our patient group, more than 100 patients with post-traumatic stress disorder, for example, many hundreds of patients with depression or anxiety is their primary problem. And we recognize this as a growing global health concern, and there is a huge need for better treatments for those conditions. So somewhat organically, we have fallen into mental health as being a real area of focus and expertise for us. And it's one of the areas that we are put most attention to for our drug development programs. And let me take you through those right now. This slide kind of snapshots our really unique drug discovery and development engines. On the cannabinoid side, what we have is that proprietary asset, 4,500, now 5,000 patients, where we can learn from each of their experiences on cannabinoid treatments and find out what works best for whom and when. They're the insights that we can gain from that data. Recently, though, now we have a novel cannabinoid delivery platform, a synthetic-based cannabinoid drug dose form that allows us to meet the requirements for TGA, but also, importantly, FDA and other global regulators. And that is going to be the dose form that's going to power our EMD3 and EMD4 programs. Each of those are focused on different indications, symptoms of psychological distress to meet the requirements of a Schedule 3 over-the-counter medicine in Australia, and then irritable bowel syndrome also. The other really key program that we have behind us now is the MDMA-based treatments, which comprise of two slightly different but similar programs. One is the MDMA-analog compound library, which is our opportunity to look at MDMA as a molecule, make adjustments to it, and try and amplify the effects that we really want from that drug and diminish the side effects that can sometimes be restrictive for some patient groups. MDMA, for example, ecstasy creates this intense pro-social kind of euphoria feeling, which is terrific if you're working through a condition like post-traumatic stress disorder, where that elevated level of compassion can help somebody address their trauma. But those effects may not be desirable if you are trying to treat something like Parkinson's disease, where really you're looking for a different kind of effect from that molecule. And so there are opportunities to adjust the molecule to get different treatments. That's our MDMA-analog compound library, and we're thrilled to be working with such an incredible resource and a team behind it to try and turn those into real treatments for major unmet needs. In parallel, we're also working on MDMA-assisted therapy with our partners at Mind Medicine Australia to develop a psychedelic-assisted program for patients with PTSD. MDMA is a very intensive drug in that it can last up to 10 hours. And so you need a safe environment, skilled therapists around an individual for a long amount of time. It is not trivial setting up that clinical service for delivering these treatments. And so there's a huge opportunity, given how effective these treatments are, to develop and lead that scalable clinical service here in Australia and elsewhere. And that's part of our mission. And of course, applying all the learnings that we've taken from our cannabinoid experience to make sure we're learning from every patient's experience on those treatments in order to broaden its benefit for more patients. So some really unique assets, insights, and delivery platforms that we've compiled here makes us quite unique from many other companies working in these spaces. I'll take you through the cannabinoid pipeline. Here's what we have: EMD3 and 4 making progress through phase 1 and phase 3. EMD3, we expect that to commence pivotal studies early next year. The phase 1 program will run in parallel for both of these programs early next year as well, and will complete in Q1. And then, of course, we want to launch new programs, EMD5, EMD6, for different indications and for different global registration opportunities. We have a growing and really robust cannabinoid platform. Unlike other patents in the cannabinoid space, many of our claims are backed by real-world clinical evidence, so we can exemplify our patent claims very robustly. We also have some technology around delivery forms and other methodologies of dosing cannabinoids as well. And we expect this portfolio to grow in the coming months. Right, so summarizing our key advantages, a really key slide here. One, we have the data to know what's working in who. We have a unique cannabinoid delivery technology, which sets us up for FDA approval, as well as TGA approval. And of course, we have a really terrific team in-house to help us with that drug development journey. First of all, we add data. I mentioned it before. Children as young as 2, patients as old as 96. A broad range of indications give us a very rich and wide view of what cannabinoid treatments can do for patients. We also have a very diverse range of experiences in different dose strengths, which is really important. Our doctors will prescribe according to what's the best evidence, according to patient benefit, which means we get this, we're not just stuck with one product or one simple way of treating these conditions. We get to explore and really push to try and get the best health goal for our patient, which has meant that we've given very wide range doses of CBD and THC across our patient population, which gives us that wide view of what is working best in whom. We can also see we're tracking the adverse events. Our data is very powerful for tracking safety information as well. And we know that more than a third of our patients have an adverse event. Now, typically that's usually something to do with THC. Perhaps the dose, people are very sensitive to THC or can be very sensitive. So most of the time, those adverse events are not serious, easily managed with dose adjustment, but they are not 0%, and they are something that needs to be tracked, certainly if you're going to apply for registration. Now about our platform. So we've made a deliberate choice recently to commit to a synthetic cannabinoid. So this is a CBD that's not extracted from plants. It is biochemically equivalent to plant-derived CBD, but highly, highly pure. We also gain some other benefits: the reliability of the dose form, highly stable, and also highly pure, which meets FDA requirements much more easily than the plant-derived options. Getting CBD to be highly pure can be very expensive. To extract it to a purity of high enough grade to meet FDA requirements, it's one of the reasons that GW's Pharma's product is so expensive. So we believe that synthetic is really one option of hitting the purity requirements, but doing it at a cost that's acceptable to patients and the market. And so we're really excited to be sort of leading the game with our synthetic platform there, with a terrific contract drug manufacturer, Alta Sciences, based in North America. So here we are. We've got this accelerated program. Our data tells us where to go. We've got IP that protects the indication. We've got access to patients and a clinical network in which to deliver the trials. Our insights have informed our registration trials. We've got the regulatory consultants engaged, much of the dossier work already done. And now we've got to add, to complement and round out our offering, a really unique differentiated dose form that automatically qualifies for FDA as well. So we don't waste any time or investment on our TGA program. We are able to take advantage of the work we do here for overseas markets also. Now, a couple of slides on why we care so much about drug registration. Registration is a bit of a boring word, but why is it so important? Well, right now in Australia, there are 190 unregistered products available for patients, which, as you can imagine, if you're a doctor trying to choose between them, can be quite overwhelming. And many of these products are very similar, and yet it's not clear what to use when and for whom. The total sales, although we get excited by that, exceeded 100 million. I think the forecasts are around 200 million for this year, which is exceptional growth. But just have a look at the sales, the global sales of one company, one product, GW Pharma's Epidiolex, for a rare form of epilepsy in the last 12 months, $686 million. And that was the company that was acquired by Jazz Pharmaceuticals, the ex-employer of our chair of the strategic advisory, Dr. Karen Smith. So one can create tremendous value if you have a registered product, because you can then obtain reimbursement and more mainstream access to patients. And what does that look like in practice? We'll have a look at the very small square on my left here. That is to scale the number of SASB applications in a 12-month period. Around 80,000 special access approvals were made for medicinal cannabis in 12 months for all indications: pain, depression, anxiety, you mentioned it. All of those are captured in that 80,000 number. Now, that number may be double that if we add authorized prescribers. There are forecasts that might go over to 100 and so thousand in 12 months, but still incredibly small compared to the number of routine prescriptions written in a 12-month period. The number to my right, 29 million for a single class of medications, antidepressants. So that represents more than 2.5 million nearly prescriptions per month for antidepressants, that's just in Australia, by the way, which just gives you a sense of the scale difference we're talking about here. I think that 29 million number is notable for a couple of things. We know that some of those patients won't respond to those antidepressants and will be stuck and perhaps needing a different treatment. So there's an opportunity there, but it also shows the kind of scale that could be potentially achieved if one does get a formally registered drug, because now you can access patients through routine prescription and also attract potentially reimbursement. But registration is the necessary threshold for getting that. So that's kind of one of the reasons we talk about it so much, and it's such a core part of our strategy. Let me take you quickly through the programs now. So EMD3 is an over-the-counter medicine for psychological distress. The TGA carved out low-dose CBD as having a space on a Schedule 3 over-the-counter registry, which means that if somebody can present compelling evidence behind CBD at that dose strength working for a particular indication, they would be allowed to sell it over the counter by pharmacists. Our data show that at that dose form, there was a particular patient population that responded very well to low-dose CBD, which gave us confidence to commence a program for that market as a way of proving our model, if you will. The chart to my bottom right here kind of shows for that particular patient population the improvement in anxiety scores for that population over a particular amount of time. And of course, we're able to use our data to finesse that population and design a clinical study that we believe will create a compelling outcome for our registration program. We also know we're targeting a very major unmet need in psychological distress, with more than 15% of Australian adults suffering from that at the moment, with pressures that may only grow with things like COVID straining people as lockdowns continue. So what does our trial approach look like? We've got a phase 1 planned Q1, a pivotal phase 3 planned to run from Q1 next year, and expected to last 4 to 5 months based on recruitment. Take you through a bigger timeline a little bit later. EMD4 is our program focused on IBS. There is no active medical treatment for IBS. This was a condition we noted our patients were reporting to us was improving greatly on cannabinoids. That got us curious. So that allowed us to start collecting more data about this particular symptom, and therefore improved our insights into where cannabinoids worked best for this population. And we're developing drug programs and unique dose forms for IBS as well as the data starts to roll in. This will be our second program that we will launch towards registration. Okay, so here's our milestones here. So quite a lot of activity over the next 12 months. We're going to complete our dose work with Alta Sciences. We'll be able to reveal some of the early analytical results of why we think that platform will be most effective. Trial material to arrive end of the year, with our phase 1 and pivotal studies to kick off in Q1, with our phase 1 completing in Q1, allowing us to do an IND with the FDA for that delivery platform while we pursue registration and commence activities for EMD4 as well. Looking to achieve formal entry on the register sort of by the end of next year, and that's when commercial sales can start. So yes, this timeline has been stretched out from earlier estimates provided, but it does bring our FDA program forward dramatically, because none of this work is wasted for our FDA efforts as well. Cool. Now let me switch to our MDMA programs, where I said we've got the MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for PTSD trial, which we are running with our partners, and then we've got the novel analog development work underway as well. Okay, there's a huge amount of investor interest in psychedelic-assisted therapies recently. If you've been following the news, I encourage you to Google it. Some enormous market capitalizations some companies pursuing things in this area. Some huge challenges ahead for those companies, though. One, creating a commercial model. How do you deliver these treatments safely to patients, given the extra infrastructure one needs around them? And obviously that raises questions on the commercial model. So we see those as opportunities for us. First of all, through our trial, what do we hope to learn from that? Well, we're going to use some of the great work that's been laid down before us from groups in the US, MAPS in particular, really to be congratulated, having worked for many years in this space to try and legitimize MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD, with some tremendous results in treatment-resistant PTSD patient sufferers. And if what we can do here, our opportunity is to figure out how to deliver that safely and scalably in Australia so that patients suffering from that condition can benefit. And that's our first step here to do that. And by the same token, building the clinical expertise, the experience, and also starting to gather some of the data that will allow us to broaden this opportunity for more patients who need it most. Here's a little bit about our program. I won't go into details here. I encourage you to take a look at this on the deck. But we're really sophisticated clinical trial with a terrific principal investigator in Dr. Ellie Kotler. Really key thing about the timeline here is that the other thing running in parallel here that could be a massive catalyst for our business is that the TGA are actively considering rescheduling MDMA and psilocybin from Schedule 9, prohibited illegal drugs, to Schedule 8, highly restricted prescription medications. This is exactly the same shift that happened in 2016 with medicinal cannabis. Medicinal cannabis was Schedule 9 and it went from Schedule 8, allowing the industry to grow that you're all familiar with. And so a similar decision point may be coming to a head by the end of this year. Now, the TGA obviously clearly considering this very thoughtfully. They've engaged an international expert group to provide an opinion. Their opinion will be delivered September 30th to the TGA. And then we expect to get clarity on where the TGA will land on MDMA and psilocybin. Now, in our opinion, MDMA is a little bit more advanced. More phase 3s have been done. That work and those early results of those phase 3 programs have been published with incredible outcome results. And so I think the evidence behind MDMA being deregistered will be quite strong, but we'll have to see where the TGA sits on that. Either way, we're prepared to continue providing access to these treatments through our trial programs. Great, but take a look at it. Really interesting to see the world evolving in this way, and tremendously exciting to see things like psychedelic assisted therapies being seriously reconsidered as possible treatments for patients who need them. Now, the other work that we've got with MDMA is the analog library. So here's the career work of medicinal chemist Dr. Matt Piggott, neuropharmacologist Dr. Martin Iverson, who have been working on making slight adjustments to this molecule, otherwise known by its street name ecstasy. It's a small molecule, crosses the brain barrier, hits a number of neuroreceptors, some of which are responsible for its the euphoria qualities which make MDMA a good treatment for PTSD. But there are other things that can that treatment could be optimized for as well. And so by understanding the medicinal chemistry and how to make design changes to that compound, one can get new molecules which may allow us to treat different conditions for different patients. And we have access to this terrific library of work, really one of a kind in the world, and now have a chance to screen it and pick the best leads and take those forward into true drug development programs. And this is what the next few months look like here. We've got a commercial patent strategy in play, a screening program, which we're about to commence, which will allow us to look at what these compounds are doing, make some predictions on which might become great treatments. Then we can take those forward through further validation studies. In parallel, we're looking to expand the library. There are additional and new molecules we can create from this work as well, and looking to create a larger library too, giving Emyria a terrific drug discovery pipeline that's one of a kind in this world. Terrific. And so just concluding here, what to look out for in the next few quarters. So on our cannabinoid programs, we'll be able to give some updates on the synthetic cannabinoid dose forms and announce some additional formulation work that we've got underway. We'll then look at the early bioavailability data and some of the preclinical toxicology data for that, which also sets us up for the FDA programs, which we'll announce in parallel. And we look to get ethics approval for that phase 1 and the pivotal EMD3 study, which will kick off in Q1 2022. We expect to complete the phase 1 by then, which allows us to sit before the FDA and figure out how to take this program most efficiently to the US market. For our MDMA program, we're looking to commence that screening work, looking to give updates on the patent filing strategy. Look out for the TGA decision coming September 30th as well for that. And then in Q4, we'll commence our validation work. The phase 2 study we hope to get underway, and the final TGA decision expected on MDMA deregistration around that time as well. And then in Q1, really exciting, expanding that library, looking to do more preclinical work, and hopefully spinning out a number of promising treatments out of that asset. Great. So, real pleasure to present today, and I welcome your questions and interest. Thank you so much. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you for that, Michael. I'll just get you to stop sharing your screen. Again, if any attendees do have any questions, please use the chat function or the Q&A function at the bottom of the screens. We have had a few questions, so I will jump into them now. So what sort of effect has Dr. Karen Smith had at Emyria so far?
Yeah, tremendous. I mean, Dr. Karen Smith initially came over because she was part of the team who had performed some due diligence on GW Pharma prior to her leaving Jazz Pharmaceuticals, and could see from our approach how much more efficient and how much faster we could pursue the registration of something like cannabinoids, because we've got access to the clinics, we've treated real world patients. So it was really, really engaged in that. And it's been very thoughtful, very helpful in helping us think through what the US opportunities might look like, particularly in a context where the US is yet to formally regulate THC. And so that creates some unique challenges about approaching the US. But recently, Karen's been very interested in some of the psychedelic-assisted therapies as well. Clearly, working in those circles, where a number of her sort of peer group have shown a real interest in this space as well. And so also sees our unique model of set up the clinics, provide access, learn from patients, use those insights to launch these, figure out where these treatments work as being a huge advantage. So I've initially saw her engagement very heavily on the Cannabinoid program, kind of switched recently into some more of the opportunities around the psychedelic assisted therapy. So I speak to Karen, regularly, at least a few times every month.
Thank you. And look, another webinar attendee has just asked, so can you elaborate on what happened with Can?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Can and Emyria are aligned. We both believe in registration. We both believe in doing the hard work, trials, creating properly registered medication. So there's no concern around, I guess, end goal. We just had different ways we wanted to get there. And the world is a little more difficult to do partnerships like that when you're in different cities and unable to travel and meet. And so at the end of the day, it just seemed worthwhile that they can pursue their program with their dose form, and meanwhile we'll take our dose form forward as well. And we were also very keen right from day one, and always been transparent about this, that our ultimate goal is those large global markets like the FDA and the EMA in Europe. And so it made sense to us as time went on to make sure that we didn't waste any effort on our Australian program, made sure everything also lined up for our FDA programs also.
Thank you, Michael. Look, there's a question that's come through just about our share price and just in terms of the marketing strategy. So webinar attendees asked, so it feels like this stock should be at 50 to 60 cents. Is there any plans to target an overseas cornerstone investor?
I think we'd always consider that if it made sense. I think we're in a really strong cash position at the moment. I think we can make some tremendous progress on our current milestones and objectives for ourselves. I think as we start to move more in the US and do more there, possibly those kinds of investments definitely make sense. But always open. Wouldn't say no, but I would agree. I think we are undervalued given where we are. I think part of that is we've had a complicated story to tell, and I think it's starting to crystallize around the drug development programs. I think people can now see what's emerging from all of this work that we've, all of these assets we've put together. And I think that's going to, give investors something to follow. That's probably a little more, what they're used to seeing, which is typical drug development, albeit accelerated and supported by what we've got underneath. Yeah.
Okay, just another one that's come through. So what is the rough cost per unit of a synthetic CBD THC versus a botanical?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's obviously a really important consideration. We know that our patients are paying out of pocket somewhere between $250 and $850 per month for 150 milligrams of CBD only, just to give one example. We believe for an over-the-counter medicine to be successful, that will need to be sub $200, ideally closer to 100. So we're talking about, orders of magnitude difference in cost reduction. We think synthetic can get there. We're looking at the trajectory and the trends of that much faster than plant-derived. Also, when you consider the purity requirements that synthetic provide, or the purity advantages that synthetic provides, very hard for botanicals to achieve that level of purity. Actually, the cost goes up with plant-derived if you try and get super, super highly pure CBD. So, yeah, I think synthetic's going to win out in the end of the day and give us a price that is acceptable over the counter. Yeah.
Okay, another one. So does your third-party manufacturer own all the extraction IP?
No, Alpha Sciences do not. We have done the formulation and the chemistry work in-house. That's our IP. We've got the recipe, so to speak, and the IP is simply one of the ingredients that we bring into the mix. And so our contract drug manufacturer is building a dose form under our instruction. And so their job is to deliver GMP grade, good manufacturing practice, high quality, patient grade product for us according to our specifications. That's our IP. Yeah.
Perfect. So just another one. So outside of MDMA and psilocybin, are there any other plans to target or access any other psychedelic compounds?
Well, I think we're going to have our hands full with the MDMA analog library we've got, and a little bit of this depends on where the TJ lands end of next month. There is a tremendous amount of interest in creating new molecules, but you do start from zero every time you come up with a new compound. So each of those novel analogues would need to be properly evaluated through preclinical, clinical studies to become a drug. So one gets a chance to treat patients with MDMA and psilocybin, known compounds, been around for a long time. One can learn from them and figure out where to make improvements on those compounds if required. And so perhaps better to start with what's known to us first and allow your drug development program, your novel screening and synthesis work to be guided by what you're learning from the clinic, rather than starting with something completely unknown. Yeah.
One's just come through. So with regards to the MDMA analog and with the groundwork done in the potential treatment for Parkinson's, are there any other exciting indications for potential medicine in the MD family?
Well, absolutely. So the Parkinson's one is of great interest to us because of the prior work that's been done in that space. I think that the family of molecules related to that indication are all incredibly promising and need to be further evaluated. Parkinson's being a major unmet need already. In the MDMA space, I think what we're looking to do there is develop molecules that might be able to broaden the inclusion criteria for patients, which may allow us to create a treatment session that's not 10 hours, but more closer to 5 hours, or something a little easier to manage in a clinical setting. And so, not looking to change in terms of psychedelic assisted therapy, or MDMA assisted therapy more accurately, not looking to change much of the qualities of the drug, apart from perhaps improving, broadening its patient base and maybe accelerating its time to action.
Thank you, Michael. And just lastly, so what is your point of difference?
Yeah, look, I think if you're looking at our company, what puts us apart, a couple of things stand out. Obviously, our clinical network and the data infrastructure that we've built, and the data, of course, that's come from that. Very difficult to build that from scratch. I mean, you need to kind of know what you're doing, come from a clinical trial world, a care delivery world. And so we've got this really robust, strong infrastructure, this substrate, which gives us fantastic insights into what treatments work for which patients. So that gives us a huge advantage. Having that clinical infrastructure, being able to manage that, not trying to run it like a for-profit. We're not trying to extract revenue off every patient. We're trying to learn from our patients, because we know that's where more value can be created ultimately, because that data then allows us to go for the really blue sky opportunities, which are these de-risked, accelerated drug development programs for major underserved populations. So I think three things: our data, our unique formulations, our unique drug compounds, and then ultimately our team who's done this before and I think can get us to the finish line faster. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I think that covers it. So thank you all for joining us today for the Emyria Limited Investor Webinar. If we've missed any questions, please feel free to reach out via the contact details on the bottom of our website, and a copy of this recording will be available on the website in the coming days. But thank you all.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks, everybody.